Hi, my name is Simon Headley, known to my clients and partners as a strategic alchemist and an ultimate connector. I'm a chartered accountant who brings together and bridges the worlds of business philosophy, finance, marketing, optimization, ontology, and so much more. Always focused on one thing, the simple idea that can make the difference to people and projects so we can tip the scales in their favor and get them complete. Pause, Stop, Reset is all about the three little words that can make the difference. They have for me and my clients, and I hope they will for you too. During the show, you'll get to learn about my guests' real-life experiences and the insights and lessons they've learned as they've navigated the resets in their personal and business lives, which you'll be able to leverage yourself. So let's start the show. Hello, I'm Simon Headley, and welcome to today's episode of Pause, Stop, Reset. Today we're joined by Jesse Eker, and I originally was introduced to him by Alex Mendosian over a decade ago. Since then, I've watched him grow and develop, focusing on helping people in so many different ways, and he is a really interesting, lovely guy. Now, firstly, you may not know this, but his father has been one of the biggest driving forces in personal development. And because of that, I think he has a really interesting perspective, skill set, and experience set, which I'm hoping to touch on into the show. But much more than that, he is a really interesting guy, and I can't wait to introduce you to him. So Jesse, with that said, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited to be here and talk to your audience and talk to you, of course.
Well, me too. We've been saying before we started the recording, like we've been building up to this for quite some time. So let's start at the beginning. So for people that may not know you yet or haven't come up with your resets, who are you and what are you focused on today?
So my name is Jesse Eker, and who am I? I would say a standpoint from many different ways. I'm a family man, I'm a businessman, I'm a creator, and I'm a health nut. And other than that, as far as values, I am someone who is really obsessed with solving problems for different markets that I find myself in. And that has been my case for my career of an entrepreneur, which now I'm on my third business by 34. And it is the common denominator between all the businesses that I start and most people where they start is solving problems. And that's kind of who I am, is I consider myself a really big problem solver. Now, the problem that I'm currently solving is helping coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs use leverage in a form of the one-to-many methods of online and virtual events. They obviously have been on the trending up and are obviously, becoming part of the norm, since live events are, I wouldn't say, in a lot of places you can't do them still, but, they're becoming a more convenient, easier, more normalized way of learning, growing, and experiencing different people. And so I am helping coaches, consultants, and, entrepreneurs learn the process, but not just learn the process in just here's how to run technology wise, because anyone who can get on Zoom can do this, but really how to do it in an effective, methodical way that builds know, like, and trust, that gets people to have a win-win scenario where they come to learn education-wise, but then you get to move them to your next level of support, and also very authentic in a way of the way that we teach this is very expert-driven versus very marketing-driven, because when me and you first were in this industry and when we first met, the industry was called the internet marketing industry. And when an industry is called internet marketing or marketing, that's a little bit of a problem, right? Because everything is based off of marketing. And for most entrepreneurs and experts, they're problem solvers, not marketers. Marketers, we consider, are amplifiers of problems and the way they communicate. And that's why a lot of experts struggle. So trying to bridge that gap in a very expert-centric way so that experts can thrive and they don't have to suffer to the marketers who are really good at being loud, but really crappy at delivering their programs, services, or how they deliver.
I love it. And I love how you talk about it very gently, like you say, but also there's an understanding, right? And you and I can nod to it without saying too much about it. There's lots of talking a lot, but not actually solving the problem, getting the real job done. And more than ever now, people need that help from these coaches, these consultants, these experts, often which nobody knows about, which is half the challenge. And I love that you also bring up that family aspect. It's been great seeing you sort of step into that over the last few years, and obviously challenging times with lockdown and these lovely teams that you've been building. So let's sort of go into how we get to here. It's interesting as well. Like I'm 44, Jesse, in a couple of weeks' time, and you're just 34. There's a whole decade there. And in internet years, in development years, that's a long time. So if you look back on your life till now, what has been the biggest shifts and resets you've been through?
Great question. So I believe, and I think that everyone in the way that they look at it could believe similar, just maybe framed in a different way, is we all have different seasons of life. And those seasons have different chapters in those seasons that, move us to where we're going. And so, as far as like my career compared to, in perspective to other people, there might not be as many or maybe there are shifts and resets that I've gone through. But, my first big shift, my first big wake up call was when my dad, and Simon, you mentioned this, he's one of the most well-known personal growth and personal success trainers in the world, and wrote one of the most well-known book in personal finance, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. And so my first year in college, he told me I was going to be broke. And when I heard that,
your dad goes, "You're going to be broke." It's like, cheers, Dad. Like,
well, we were having a conversation because he sent me to, I was living in Canada at the time, and he sent me to, I really wanted to go back to America because my first 9 years of life was in America. Then I moved to Canada, and I really wanted to experience this school spirit, like the rah-rah of an American university. And so I applied to the one university I knew I could get into, Arizona State, which on the other side was a very social partying experience, right? It was the classic American university experience. And so he knew that. And so, he saw me throughout high school, and I never really tried. The only thing I tried in was sports, and I was very good. I was, I got a lot of awards. I was recruited to get different scholarships. I had 8 full ride scholarships for football that I turned down because I didn't want to necessarily play anymore. But I wanted to go to this one school. And so it was expensive. It was like almost 30 grand a year internationally. And I couldn't work because of a visa in America. And so he is very value driven as far as like you get what you earn. And so I never got anything more because like my upbringing with him was not wealthy. It was very middle class. And then when I was about 13 or 14 years old, around there, he hit it. And so I saw the shift of going from like middle class to wealthy very quickly and what that does. And so, but the principles always stayed the same as far as like, you've got to bring value to the marketplace. You got to earn what the market's going to pay you what you earn as far as the value that you bring. And so when it came down to it, he was like, if you don't get a 3.0 average or above, you're going to be paying for school. And then we had like a little tiff, I was like, what the heck, Dad? Like, I'm here. It's like my first week, like get off my back. And then he was like, you know what? I'm just going to say this. You want to be wealthy, but you have a broke person's habits. And so if you've read his book, you know the way that he talks. Rich people think this way, broke people think that way. So it's not something new that I'm used to, but it was very new that my role model, my mentor, my best friend said that to my face. And that was my first gut punch of, whoa, like what the heck? First of all, F you, Dad. On the other side, it was, maybe you're right. Maybe I ain't doing the consistent actions of a successful person. Maybe I'm not having the characteristics of what people who are successful do. And so that was my first wake up call. And it really woke me up and put me into a spin as far as, okay, I need to do what I need to do in school so that I can prove that I can do stuff outside of school. And so it wasn't the teachings in school, it was the habits and behaviors that I had to consider to start to build the habits and behaviors of what success felt like, looked like, and acted like in the future. So that was the first one.
Oh, I like that. What was your degree you were doing there?
So I started with a business degree in marketing, and then I ended up adding a second degree in small business and entrepreneurship halfway through.
And looking back, was that useful training, or was it like the wrong stuff they taught you?
So school is very much memorization. And so what I think was useful was the habits and behaviors you had to put into place to be able to succeed in the school. There was one class in 4 years that I would say was useful for my upbringing, like my career. And it wasn't even like as far as like a trade-off, but it was the way that we learned in the class. And so that way in the class was very much, you read a case study and then you talked about the case study and you got judged as far as your participation and your elegance and your discussion. That's how you got your grade. And so it wasn't about memorizing anything. It was about, do you understand the concepts and how can you put it into place? I thought it was a brilliant class.
Really
other than that, though, yeah, it was so interesting. And it sticks out to me as my favorite class. I loved the way that we did it. We studied financial evaluations of all these great companies. And it was just a really good class. Everything else was like, what's a target market? And it's like, yeah, it's important to know what a target market, but the definition of a target market doesn't make sense. It's the application of how you use a target market in marketing that makes sense. And that's what it kind of missed out on. And that's what I understand now is like, you see these terms, but like, how do you use it in the real world? That's what school is missing.
That's the juice. And it's kind of what we're doing these podcasts for, Jesse, because the idea of pausing, stopping, and resetting, they're not new ideas. But when you're actually living it and actually being with it and navigating it, you need sometimes that inspiration then to get on the court. And leads me into my next question for you, which is like, if you think about you, do you find it easy to pause? Do you find it easy to stop, to reset? Which of those is the hardest for you? And why do you think that is?
It's a great question. I think that resetting is probably one of the hardest things for me. Just being a father of 2 babies. So I have my son, Jordan, who's 2 years and 4 months, and then my daughter, Brooklyn, who just turned 11 months today. And so, they're very close in age. And when my feet hit the floor, I am going until my feet go back into the bed. Now, I do this with grace and I do this with connection, and I'm very intentional in how I do things. And I set my day up where I have strong boundaries to put my values in place with my health, my business, my relationships, and my kids. But resetting is the hardest thing. I would say, a close second is stopping. Pausing, I think, is the easiest. And the reason why I think it's the easiest is because I build it into my calendar. And so, for me, I put time in my calendar for me to pause, for me to think, for me to reflect, for me to look at what's going on. Now, once a quarter or once every 4 or 5 months, I do go on a 24 to 48 hour trip. And I do some reflection and resetting as far as like, what do I want to do? And, the new year just came and that was a great time to, again, just put yourself in a scenario of what do I want my life to be like? What do I want my work to be like? And I actually did reset my work life as far as what does my calendar look like on Monday and Tuesday. I have no calls. I'm only doing this. And I restructured everything just because it was like I wanted to start something fresh. So I think when it comes down to it, pausing is the easiest, But as far as resetting, that I think is the hardest.
I agree with you. And it's interesting. And I thought that would be the case. I love that you're putting the time in. I learned that the hard way off my banking career. Like you had to put buffers between meetings so you could reset. Otherwise, you're just you're back to back for like 48 hours nonstop. Just like there's always some of the call, right? There's always something else going on. The live events, some Zoom, some Clubhouse stuff. And having that buffer time. But the reset and having a real reset, not like a pretend one, it's a challenge because it's easy to go back into those old habits, those old behaviors, and never really reach into what's really possible, those sort of quantum shifts, those quantum leaps. And I love your focus on the family. It's something that is so important now more than ever, I think, when life can be so quick and so busy. And obviously you're still, in my view, a young man. Hopefully you can take that with, wise for your years, but you're still a young guy, right?
I'll take it. I'm good with it.
I'm curious what lessons you wish, like if you could do that magic pill stuff and send it back to the 10-year-old Jesse, the younger you, what are the lessons you wish you could have given your younger self and why?
Some of the lessons that I wish I gave my younger self, I think the most important thing that I see is consistency for the long term and understanding that now, looking back. Consistency compounds. And I think as a kid, and especially seeing like the rise in tech and seeing billionaires seeming to become billionaires overnight through news of social media and the power of posting now and, comparisonitis of everyone doing well and showing their highlight reel. You want things to go much faster. And so, you tend to, and I did this early in my career, jump from thing to thing. And it wasn't until, I started to do extremely well that I looked back and was like, what am I doing? Like that I can really pinpoint to it. And it was just doing the same thing over and over again consistently. And it was the times that I was spreading myself thin, trying to do too much that we pulled back and we actually dipped. And so if I was going to just say like, focus on one thing, it's go deep instead of wide. It's consistently move forward and just remember that your consistency compounds.
I really love that. I'm one of those that's learned that and knows it, and it's still hard to apply, right? And
it is.
I'll nod to your dad. The thing I know about him indirectly and a bit directly, he's one of the most consistent trainers of like doing the script. I'm sure you went to more than one MMI over the years, right? And it doesn't change. And it's doing that. When you first come across like doing the intro, doing your work, doing your exercises, you were doing football were you a quarterback? I'm just curious. It's on the football side. What was your...
I was actually a receiver and I was a defensive back as well.
So doing those, I don't know what you call it, your practices, going out and doing the catches again and again and again and again until they're so unconditionally in your soul that you can do it at 2 a.m. sounds easy. I mean, for me, it's weird. I did Tai Chi since I was 14, 15, right? And they said 20 years to be a master. 20 years on, I sort of understand why now. But 3 years in, you think you've got it. The same with doing a speech or doing a podcast. It's like, we've done this before, we've got it. And then other stuff goes on. And especially in the financial stuff, I think for so many of us with this overnight success stuff, it can get really conflicted. And or to be other side of that, to be that sort of magical complacency, like, hey, Jesse, it'll all work out. We just have to like take a breath and breathe and trust, but not doing the reps, not actually going and doing the podcast, reaching out to people. Anything you want to add on that? Anything that sort of springs to mind to add on before we move on? But I love that consistently compounding. It's such a vital thing to do when you're focusing in the right place.
Yeah, I think the other big thing, and you kind of just mentioned a little bit of it, is I wish I had a better understanding of the difference between an expectation and an intention. And I think it would have saved myself a lot of pain, disheartened, disappointment, because I find that there's always a gap between what you expect and what reality is. And having the awareness now and the understanding, the consciousness at least, to understand that where you are right now is where you're meant to be, is a great lesson to understand now. But I don't know if I would have understood it later. But just having that awareness of this is where you're supposed to be, and these expectations that you have for yourself, like they are very ego driven and very external of things that you can't control. And intentions are very internal. And so, when you look at expectations, the first two letters are EX, right? And then you look at internal, it's EIN. And so you can just look at the differences: external versus internal. External things you have no control over. And if you have no control over things, you usually get, if you don't get it, disappointed, and you measure yourself against it. Internal are things that you can control, like, your standards, how you show up for the day, the processes that you take, the consistency, the actions. And so focusing on the intentions that drive you and the intentions of how you want to be the best version of yourself. I wish I knew the difference earlier so that I could, just have more grace than I think, beating yourself up if you're not doing as well as you think you should.
That's a really, I'm sort of nodding along, that distinction of expectations and intentions, that playing full out, but also being open to the universe showing up the way it shows up. Especially if you're quite a strong character, like a competitive sports person, right? We tend to try and make things happen and force things, and actually it can get in the way sometimes. And it's a funny dance that happens, I think. But I love that consciousness aspect. You can hear again why I wanted Jesse to be a guest for us, because this living of the work is, I think, so important. And for me, one of the things where I'm having a good day and I need to celebrate, or one of those days of I need to get my head out of my own head and reset. I love reading books and movies. I literally remember Micah Mitchell giving me your dad's book signed 15 years ago when I was first getting out to infusion cons. And it was this is interesting. And I'm sort of resetting the brain a bit. I'm just curious what books have helped you, or movies and books have helped you pause, stop, and reset, Jesse.
I just finished listening to an amazing book by Brene Brown, The Power of Vulnerability. And it wasn't actually a book. It was her doing a live talk to an audience. It's about 5 hours, but it was phenomenal. And I think she's great. And, I really just listened to it. And it's the process I'm in right now of just getting a little bit more in touch with what's going on and myself and being a father and stuff like that. So it's a really great book that I highly recommend. Another one is The Road Less Stupid. And The Road Less Stupid is by Keith Cunningham. And the reason why it helps so much with pause, stop, and reset is because the whole premise around it is all about creating thinking time for yourself. And so Keith is brilliant. He's a family friend, and he gives you all these prompts as far as what questions you can ask to give yourself some thought to think deeper. And thinking time is all about how do you think your way through things so that you don't make the mistakes that tend to happen. So, those are the two that I would say that very different, but also very amazing at the same time.
Well, I love that. And part of what I love doing this for, Jesse, I've not come across The Road Less Stupid one, but I get it. I love the idea of it. And that Keith is exceptional. He's a really smart guy. And it's interesting how there's sort of different voices coming, and also you find them on your journey. So you may come across the resources, Brene Brown stuff, especially, have been kind of a big movement that's both really well known and hasn't been implemented. And that vulnerability bit is so a bit like your expectations, intentions piece, right? Learning when to be vulnerable as an asset, but also not leveraging going, Jesse, I'm being vulnerable now. I haven't done my homework. Oh, sorry. It's playing it the right way and being true to yourself in the process. That's really, appreciate the honesty and the self-reflection there.
Yeah. Great.
So one of the things I'm curious about, right? And you've been through it, I'm sure, different ways, and it can be good things that you have to reset and challenging times. What's helped you navigate those resets? What's helped you on those moments when you need to sort of dig deep? What's the stuff that you go back to that helps you?
I think having a sounding board is the easiest. So, I'm very transparent, and a lot of it used to be in my head. And, more recently, that started to build up for me, just because I started a new business a year ago. I had another kid. I moved states. this whole pandemic was happening, and it was just a lot going on at the same time.
Just a little reset going, nothing major.
We had to pivot the other company. I was running 2 companies now. We had to cut back on some of the staff, and then we tried to grow again. There was a lot going down. So one of the things that I really, started to really work on was creating a really strong sounding board. And what does that look like? Well, first, if you have a partner, for me, it's my wife. She's my first check as far as, hey, I would love to just explain things to you, to just have a sounding board. On top of that, starting to do some of the inner work people talk about has really been helpful for myself. And it's again, I've always been in like a drive format. It's very the athletic competition person in me. And even though I do reflect, it's more surface level reflecting, like, what worked, what didn't, how can I improve? Right. It's like very like, okay, let's just get to it. And so like I got a coach, an inner energy coach. It might sound a little woo-woo, but it's very just, mindset. And it's more about having the mind of a champion and, being very fluid in that. And that work has been really, really helpful as far as, creation and performing and actually like, attracting a lot more of what I want instead of a lot more of what I don't want. And so getting more in the flow and alignment of making conscious choices versus have to decisions. And that's easier said than done. But, when you feel like you have to do something, there's this resistance that you tend to put up. And when you feel like you get to do something and you're aligned with it, the whole frame and feeling around it creates different actions for you to go through, which creates different results. So I think some of that stuff has been really shaping as far as a sounding board. And then also, just very tactical as far as something that really helps me is I don't really like to wear shoes very often. And the reason why is because I like to, it's kind of weird, but I like to feel the floor. And, you feel the floor in a grounded way is like, if you just put your feet on the floor and take a couple of deep breaths, like I don't know what it is. Is the universe? Is it nature? I have no idea, but like there is a lot of scientific evidence as far as like grounding yourself into the ground with your feet. And, that's something that I just do by just taking a couple deep breaths if I really need to, slow down.
I'm loving it, Jesse. And also it's almost like we haven't scripted today's show, I really promise you, but it is almost like exactly the perfect thing because it is all about that. And that's sort of really the secret sauce of Pause Stop Reset. It's stepping into that super flow surface state of life and business. And I love how you talk like you're doing more of what you're looking for, less of what you don't, able to navigate it. You've got those sounding boards that you consciously have built up. And it's so valuable having those people that you can just like go, hey, I need to vent for a minute or bounce something off you. And I'm guessing you also know yourself quite well. You know when like you're on tilt and when you're in good flow. Is that true for you?
I think it's more newer actually. So, I've been very like, if anyone knows my dad, he's created a course called Enlightened Warrior. And in Enlightened Warrior, I went to when I was 16 years old, and I loved it because it's very much my style. It's a whatever it takes attitude type person. Like you were just going to get it done no matter what. And so that has been, I'm a go-to warrior by nature, but that, creates a very hardcore life sometimes. And so sometimes you push through those feelings without actually feeling them and actually getting to tune, because it's like, this is just my MO. Like that's what I say gets done. And so, I think more recently throughout this whole last couple of years, I've definitely got to know myself more. Again, being a dad, being a new business, like I had to dig deeper into getting to know that myself really quickly, better than I did before.
Really, again, useful distinctions there. And it is part of where it's a challenging world, right? All these, and again, this is a friendly, open conversation. There are different styles of teaching that are going to say, hey, you have to find a way, hustle, make it happen. And others that are like, no, strategically plan and trust, and finding the way that works for you. And it is personal. And I think it changes those seasons of life you touched on as you go through different phases, right? That dad mode, it's a different context for living than it was before. But there is a lot of interesting stuff that's coming up, and it's still early days. So we're going to get some really focused, Jesse, for a little bit. So for people listening, often they are looking to make a shift for themselves. What are your biggest suggestions for them? Like all your skills and wisdom that you've been around and what's worked for you. Like if you could give your daughter or your son when they're 18, they're like, hey, dad, how do I shift my life and get better results, more possibilities in my life? What are your top tips for them, Jesse?
When it comes down to it, the way for change is awareness, understanding, reconditioning, right? And so the first thing is always becoming aware. And, if you want to make a shift in your life, you got to be aware of what you're doing. And so the two ways that I would look at this very strategically, and funny enough, I was talking about this yesterday, is one, what do you want? And understanding that if you don't know what you want, it's going to be really hard for you to get what you want. And so what do you want? Use the terms of a metaphor as far as like, where do you want to go? Do you want to go to California? Do you want to go to New York? Do you want to go to Florida? Do you want to go to UK? Do you want to go to Australia? Do you want to go, to Sweden? Where are you going? Right. And all of those different places that I'm talking about could be different, things that you want, tangible things that you want in your life. Maybe it's financially, maybe it's health, maybe it's relationship, whatever it is, you got to be tangible. Like, can you see it, feel it, know it? Can you point to it? Can you say, this is what I want? And then I think people can do that. And they're like, this is like a great goal. Where people tend to fall off the wagon is being transparent and honest with where they're at. And because this makes a huge difference for you getting what you want. See, what you see online, what you see people doing is where they're at and what works for them. And if you try to do what other people are doing, it's great to model, but if you're not aware with where you're at, you could be going down the completely wrong path. And this is really important because, let's say you want to go to California and you're currently in New York. Well, that's going to be one specific route for you to get there. But if you're lying to yourself and you're really in Florida and you're trying to get to California and you try to take that same route, that's going to be a problem for you. And so I'm using the metaphor as far as, what you see is not necessarily right for you. What's right for you is where you're at, but really being honest with where you're at. And so that reality is really important to understand is, what do I want? Where am I currently at as far as awareness? Why am I doing this? And how can I make the shift as far as if I was going to attain this or make this shift, what would that look like? And then again, looking back, what am I not doing? And just seeing the difference. And then every single month or quarter, take one of those things, not more, only one, and make a shift. Because what's really hard is to change habits and behavior. If you try to change too many, you're not going to do very well. So you only work on one. And when you're done with one, then you move on. And so that's what I would say for someone trying to make that shift.
Love it. And much more to touch on in future conversations, I think. And just to add just the short versions, one of the problem with modeling other people is often you don't see all of what you're modeling. You see a little, the iceberg. Like you might see Jesse doing a Facebook Live. You don't know the preparation behind the scenes he's doing or the teams, and you're modeling what you think is the right thing, but it isn't. And I also love that. I love that way you described it. And it's so important. I think the challenge for many of us, I've lost a couple of teachers and mentors, friends the last few months with various health challenges that happened. And it's sometimes not clear what it is you do want. And it's so, in a world that's so busy and got to get things going, right? There's enlightened warrior modes of make it happen, find a way. to actually go, I actually don't know. It's really confronting sometimes. I mean, like, you don't know what you want. It's like, well, you must do. Like, I don't know. And as challenging as it can be for like, what do you want to make for lunch tomorrow? It can be even bigger around relationships and decade-like impact, because the focus you have today over a decade has all these ripples we have no idea about. And but I love how you described that, Jesse. And I want to get you more refined for a second. Like, imagine they're at the water cooler tomorrow, if there was a water cooler moment, and they're like, hey, I heard Jesse yesterday. What's the one takeaway you really wish they were left with?
The one takeaway I hope that people have, I think the big takeaway that I'd like everyone to take from this is where you're at is perfect for where you're supposed to be. And that's a good feeling. And that's exactly what it's supposed to be. Now, if you're not in a good situation or a good circumstance, totally understand and complete empathy for it. At the same time, the lessons you're learning, the things you're going through is a season of your life. And once you get through it, it will open up all different possibilities of what's next. So that's what I would say is where you're at is where you're supposed to be.
I love how you say it. And Jesse, I really appreciate how you're being, right? Because you can be really, let's call it American confident. And you're not. You're a really humble guy that knows some stuff and is living some stuff and being with it and sharing it. I really appreciate that. Cool. Are there any other guests? And you can sort of touch me offline. Are there any guests you think would be great guests based on what you've, well, let's try that again. Delete that stuff. So Jesse, you've been a great guest and I loved hearing what you had to share. I'm just curious if there's anybody that you'd love to hear what they would be saying as their answers, who you think would be a great guest for us.
Keith Cunningham. I think he'd be great.
Awesome. Well, I challenge you to help make that happen for me. Maybe we can have you and me host it together, but I'd love to have Keith on. He'd be a great guest. And that's part of what I think is really exciting, right? The world used to be very competitive, and we're in this really much more connected world of collaborative people that really can share and connect and make a big difference. And where people are really clear, where they want to get to, it is actually easier than ever to get value and get connected with people. And I'm sure people today, Jesse, want to hook up with you, get connected with what you're doing and how you're helping coaches and consultants. What's the best way for them to do that?
The best way would be to, I have two places. One is going to be, I have a Facebook group called Build Your Brand Online with Jesse Eker. We have almost 10,000 people in there. I give a lot of free content away, a lot of great trainings, a lot of PDFs and things that we use with our clients. Would love to have you in there. Also on Instagram is another place to find me, and we invite you to all the different stuff. So I'd say those are the two best places to find me, or you could just add me as a friend on Facebook, and I'm cool with that as well.
And I love that sometimes people find it hard to do the spelling. So it's Jesse, Jesse, and then Eker, Eker. Is that right, Jesse?
Yep.
I know it is, but we like to confirm here. Like I've really enjoyed talking with you today, Jesse. It's reminded us stuff for me, but also I'm excited because I know your journey is just beginning. You know what I mean? Like you touched on when you were growing up and watching your dad have this mega success. I think for you, the next decades ahead are going to be really exciting. But more than that, I know how you focus on your clients and the impact they're going to have is even bigger. So that's I can't wait to see that happen, the ripples that has, because I really do think when we all come together, take that time to pause, stop and reset and connect, we all can make a bigger difference. And that reminder from you of consistency compounding, it is such an important thing to take those steps day in, day out and move it forward. And also that thing, that sort of takeaway you left us with, that where you are today is like, it's perfect. Where you are is where you're meant to be. Even doesn't feel like it, there are brighter days ahead. And as you get that self-awareness, that openness, there are ways to move forward and to make an impact. Is there anything you want to add, Jesse, before we wrap up the show today? Do you want to add and say just to be complete?
No, thank you so much for listening. If you've listened this far, and appreciate you, and looking forward to connecting more in the future. Thank you so much for having me, Simon. Appreciate you.
I'm a love it, man. And I'm a big fan of what you've been doing and supporting where I can for you and your dad's work. And the interesting thing I know is there are people that have been through the events that we sent to your dad's event, to your stuff, that you don't know the impact it's made on their lives and their families. And that's exciting. And there's a big difference you said earlier between like the marketers that are just trying to make a dollar, nothing wrong with that, and people that are really up for problem solving and making a big impact in the world. And I know you're in that latter category, and a smart marketer too, don't get me wrong, right? So you're both and, not either or. I've really enjoyed it. And so as we're coming up to the end of the show here, So you get maximum value, please head to Apple Podcasts, make sure to subscribe, give us 5 stars, and please share what you heard from Jesse that you're going to take some action on that got you a bit excited and ready to move forward for yourself, your life, and your business. Do check out his Facebook groups and Instagrams, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now. Once again, I'm Simon Headley. Thank you for listening to this episode of Pause, Stop, Reset, which is brought to you by the team at simonx.com and published by thesimpleidea.com. So you get maximum value and to access all the bonuses and gifts, make sure to head to pause.reset.com, register and explore the portal. And if you're looking for great people, check out onesmartnetwork.com. If you've enjoyed the show, do give us a positive review, subscribe, and share this episode with friends. I can't wait to share our next episode with you. Till then, remember you can always choose to pause, stop, reset.